Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa.
Liberation, Relevance of Sutta Vinaya, Discourses and Discipline, by late Venerable Dhammavuddho or Bhante Hye. Introduction. Nowadays, there is a proliferation of books on Buddhism. Studying these books would inevitably result in imbibing some of the views and interpretations of the various writers on what the Buddha actually taught, which could result in some wrong views. On the other hand, there are some meditation teachers who advise their students not to study at all but to only meditate. In effect, what they are suggesting is for their students to listen to them only. Avoiding the two extremes, we should practice the middle way taught by the Buddha, investigate his discourses and practice as best we can the Noble Eightfold Path, as he advised. The importance of the Buddha's discourses for the practice of the Dhamma, whether by lay people or by monks, can hardly be exaggerated. The Buddha warned of the future when people would refuse to listen to his discourses, suttas. Samyutta Nikaya SN 20.7 reads, "In the future, those suttas uttered by the Tathagata, deep, profound in meaning, transcending the world, concerning emptiness, to these when uttered they will not listen, will not give a ready ear, will not want to understand, to recite, to master them. But those discourses, later books, made by poets, mere poetry, a conglomeration of words and phrases, alien, outside the Buddha's teachings, the utterances of disciples, later monks, to these when uttered they will listen, will give a ready ear, will want to understand, to recite, to master them." Thus, it is, monks, that the suttas uttered by the Tathagata, deep, profound in meaning, transcending the world, concerning emptiness, will disappear. Therefore, monks, train yourselves thus, to these very suttas will we listen, give a ready ear, understand, recite and master them. Instead of the suttas themselves, many prefer to study other books or listen to others' teachings, which may be inconsistent with the suttas. The resulting damage is twofold. The suttas will disappear, and people will gain wrong understanding of the Dhamma. Nikaya or collections. The suttas are contained in the Sutta Pitaka, treasury of discourses, within which are 5 collections, Nikayas. Of these, the first 4 are. Dingha Nikaya consists of 3 books of long discourses, 34 suttas or discourses. Majjhima Nikaya comprises 3 books containing middle-length discourses, 152 suttas or discourses. Samyutta Nikaya contains about 3,000 short discourses in 5 books, and Anguttara Nikaya contains about 8,000 short discourses in 5 books. Khuddaka Nikaya, the 5th, is the minor or small collection. Although termed small, it is in fact the largest, as more and more books have been added to it over the years. It has grown to 15 books in the Thai and Sri Lankan versions. In 1956, the Sangha Council in Burma added another 3 books, which are not the Buddha's own words. These 3 editions are Milinda Panha, Petako Padsa, and Netapakarana. This is how the Khuddaka Nikaya grew from a minor collection to become a major collection. In the future, say in 500 or 1000 years' time, this would definitely create even more confusion. Out of the 18 books now, probably only 6 are reliable in that they do not contradict the 4 Nikayas. These 6 reliable books are the Dhammapada, Sutta Nipada, Therigatha, Therigatha, Itivuttaka, and Udana. As Buddhists, we should be familiar with the suttas and if possible, obtain our own copies. It is a sad fact that whereas we rarely find Muslims without the Quran or Christians without the Bible, yet we find many Buddhists without the Nikayas. Dhamma, Vinaya is our teacher or teaching and discipline is our teacher. Nowadays, the Buddha's teachings are often referred to as Tipitaka or Tripitaka, 3 treasuries, although they were called Dhammavinaya by the Buddha in the discourses. In Anguttara Nikaya AN 4.180, the Buddha specifically refers to Dhamma as the suttas, discourses. Vinaya is the disciplinary code of monks and nuns. In the Nikayas, it is also implied that the suttas are Saddhamma, which means true Dhamma. In the Vinaya or discipline and also Sutta Anguttara Nikaya AN 8.51, the Buddha said that the true Dhamma will last, i.e. be unpolluted, 500 years. Luckily within that 500 years we had Emperor Asoka who had the words of the Buddha engraved on stone pillars. Archaeologists have unearthed those pillars which prove that the true Dhamma consisted of only the early 5 Nikayas. The true Dhamma is embodied in the earliest discourses of the Buddha found in the Dingha, long-length discourses, Madhyama, middle-length discourses, Samayutta, group discourses, and Anguttara Nikayas, numbered discourses, and the 6 books of Khuddaka Nikaya, minor discourses, mentioned above. These Nikayas or collections are generally accepted by all schools of Buddhism to be the original teachings of the Buddha, unlike other books which are controversial because they contain some contradictions with the Nikayas. The earliest discourses in the Nikayas are very consistent and contain the flavor of liberation from suffering. In the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, Dingha Nikaya DN 16, which details the demise of the Buddha advised the monks, "Whatever Dhammavinaya I have pointed out and formulated for you, that will be your teacher when I am gone." This is a very important statement, the significance of which has been overlooked by many Buddhists. Because many Buddhists have not heard this advice or grasped its significance, they search far and wide for a teacher they can be proud of and brag about his attainments, etc. Some even travel halfway round the world or more in such a search. These people create personality cults based on the perceived goodness of the teacher rather than on the Dhammavinaya itself. In some cases, after many years, their master passes away leaving them high and dry. Despite the passage of time, the followers have not made much progress and have failed to taste the essence of the Dhamma. They would feel empty. As such, we must always remember that the Dhammavinaya is our foremost teacher. Again, in Dingha Nikaya DN 16, the Buddha said, "Monks, be a lamp unto yourselves, be a refuge unto yourselves, with no other refuge. Take the Dhamma as your lamp, take the Dhamma as your refuge, with no other refuge." In other words, we should depend solely on ourselves and on the Buddha's words. The Buddha's words take precedence. Let us consider what happened after the Buddha's passing away. About 100 years after the Buddha passed into Nibbana, conflict arose among the monks. The Second Sangha Council was consequently called to resolve these differences. 10 points were disputed, one of which concerned whether we should always follow the advice of our teacher. In this case, it was decided that if a monk's teachings or instructions were in accordance with the Buddha's teachings, i.e., the earliest suttas and Vinaya, then his words should be followed. However, if his instructions contradicted the Buddha's teachings, they should be ignored. Thus, the Second Sangha Council's ruling on this matter was very clear and definite: the Buddha's words take precedence over any monk's words. Buddhists should therefore become familiar with the suttas so that they can judge whether the instructions of monks or some other teachers are in accordance with the Buddha's teachings. This is why Buddhists should always remember the Dhammavuddho as their foremost teacher, more specifically for lay people, the earliest discourses in the Nikayas. Refuge only in the Buddha, Dhamma, or teaching and Sangha or devotee community. But nowadays, some people have added a fourth refuge, i.e., refuge in a teacher, which contradicts the Buddha's teachings. This is made very clear in the suttas. For instance, in Majjhima Nikaya MN 84, there was an arahant who taught very impressively and a king asked to take refuge in him. The arahant replied that refuge could not be taken in him but only in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. The king then asked where the Buddha was. The arahant explained that the Buddha had passed into Nibbana, but even so people should still take refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. This shows we should always acknowledge the Buddha as our foremost teacher, now embodied in his teachings, Dhammavuddho. The Dhamma refers to his discourses, suttas. The Sangha is the community of monastics, ideally those who are noble, Arya. World-renowned teacher can have wrong views. It is very difficult to distinguish between an Arya and a non-Arya, and we cannot rely on hearsay alone. Recommendations that such and such is a very famous monk who has many high attainments, etc., are very unreliable. As the Buddha stated in the Anguttara Nikaya AN 5.88, it is possible that a world-renowned monk of very senior status, with a huge following of lay and monastic disciples, and who is highly learned in the scriptures, can have wrong views. The Buddha gave us this warning for the future, i.e. nowadays, as he saw and knew that even such monks could not be relied upon. Therefore, the suttas, and Vinaya for monastics, should be relied on and made our foremost teacher. Other teachers can be spiritual friends only. In Anguttara Nikaya and 4.180, the Buddha taught the great authorities. He advised that when any monk says that such and such are the teachings of the Buddha, we should, without scorning or welcoming his words, compare those words with the suttas and Vinaya. If they are not in accordance with the suttas and Vinaya, we should reject them. Anguttara Nikaya AN 4.180, Mahapadisa Sutta. Here, monks, a monk might say, in the presence of the Blessed One I heard this is the Dhamma, this is the Vinaya, this is the teacher's teaching. In such and such a residence a Sangha is dwelling with elders and prominent monks. In the presence of that Sangha I heard this is the Dhamma, this is the Vinaya, this is the teacher's teaching. In such and such a residence several elder monks are dwelling who are learned, heirs to the heritage, experts on the Dhammavuddho, experts on the outlines. In the presence of those elders I heard this is the Dhamma, this is the Vinaya, this is the teacher's teaching. In such and such a residence one elder monk is dwelling who is learned, an heir to the heritage, an expert on the Dhammavuddho, an expert on the outlines. In the presence of that elder I heard this is the Dhamma, this is the Vinaya, this is the teacher's teaching. That monk's statement should neither be approved nor rejected. Without approving or rejecting it, you should thoroughly learn those words and phrases and then check for them in the suttas, discourses, and seek them in the Vinaya, monastic discipline. If when you check for them in the suttas and seek them in the Vinaya, you find that they are not included among the suttas and are not to be seen in the Vinaya, you should draw the conclusion, surely this is not the word of the Blessed One, Arahant Sammasambuddha. It has been badly learned by that monk. Thus, should you discard it? Again, this illustrates how a strong grasp of the Sutta Vinaya is a reliable guide to what the Buddha actually taught. This knowledge enables us to distinguish between a teacher who teaches the true Dhamma and another who has wrong views. Significance of Saddhamma or true Dhamma. In Samyutta Nikaya SN 16.13, the Buddha warned that the true Dhamma would not disappear until fake Dhamma arises in the world. Thereafter, it will become very difficult to distinguish the true teachings from the false. Why? Because although many of these later books contain a lot of Dhamma, some adhamma, i.e., what is contrary to the Dhamma, are added here and there. These alterations scattered throughout these texts are only noticeable if one is sharp and very well versed in the earliest suttas. Otherwise, one would find it very difficult to distinguish the later books from the earlier ones. In the Pasadika Sutta, Dingha Nikaya DN 29, the Buddha says his teaching is pure, perfect, and complete, and if anyone were to add to the Buddha's teaching, or deduct from it, he does not see, understand, the Dhamma, i.e., does not possess vision of the Dhamma, namely right view. This means we should only rely on the Buddha's original discourses instead of later books. It also means that those who wrote those later books with a lot of material not found in the early discourses do not possess right view, i.e. are not Aryans. Another implication of this sutta is that our Buddha Gautama is the topmost Buddha because his teaching is perfect and complete. So why follow the teaching of some ordinary worldlings when you can follow a perfect Buddha? Analogy: gold trading. In Samyutta Nikaya SN 16.13, the Buddha likened this situation to gold trading. He said that at that time people still wanted to buy gold because only pure gold was being sold in the market. But one day, people would make counterfeit gold. Under these circumstances, people will find it hard to distinguish between real and counterfeit gold. In the same way, the Buddha said in the future the Dhamma would become polluted. When that happens, it will be very difficult to distinguish the true Dhamma from the false. Therefore, we must take the trouble to find out what is the true Dhamma, and not become confused.